I'm Megan Knowlton-Bound. I'm the director of Noises Off at Bridge Players that's opening this January 2010.
How did you hear about Bridge Players?
The first community theater show that I did as a child was with Bridge Players. It was Oliver when I was in 6th grade, and I just love the company. I grew up, went off to college, majored in theater, and came back to the area and really wanted to give back to the community, give back to Bridge Players.
When did you first become interested in directing Noises Off?
Well, the show was actually picked as a group effort. I had watched the movie and just loved it. It's totally a challenge to do on stage. If anybody's seen the movie, they kind of understand there are so many props. The set has to flip. The same act is done 3 times, 3 different ways, and it's a very big challenge. Pat Murata was really supportive and wanted to do the show, wanted to bring it back to the area, and the time was right, so I took it up.
So you must have directed shows before, because this sounds like a pretty difficult thing to do. So how many shows have you directed before, and how is Noises Off different than these? You talked a little bit about this, but can you compare the shows you've directed before to this show?
Sure. I've directed about 4 or 5 shows prior to this. They've all been straight shows with the exception of one. By straight show, I mean a show without music in it. The first show that I directed 2 different one-acts, and that was kind of a challenge in and of itself because you have about 10 to 20 minutes to tell a full story. You have minimal set, only a few actors, so it's a more small-scale cast. I recently directed a Christmas show at Broadway Theater of Pittman, which was a musical, and that had its own host of problems because when something's a musical, you have to work around choreography needs, musical needs, as well as your acting needs and your staging and the set. So that was totally different. Noises Off is probably the most unique show that I've directed. It has a large cast for a straight show. There's 8 actors in it. And all the actors have to work very closely together, which can be difficult when you're rehearsing because you can't just break the show up into different scenes and rehearse 2 pages here, 3 pages there. You have to have everybody present in every rehearsal, which has its own host of challenges. But most importantly, the biggest challenge with this show, which I have never had to deal with, is the set. It's the most complicated set. It's a very specific set. There needs to be a certain amount of doors. There needs to be 2 stories. And that can be really challenging to deal with when you can't do something minimally, when you have to actually go all out and do something incredibly complicated.
So did you come up with a plan for building this set? How did you figure out how to pull this off?
Yeah, we actually, before the show was approved, we had to get the set design approved because without the set, you can't do the show. This space has its challenges because there's only an 11-foot proscenium, and to do a full, true 2-story set, you need to have more than 11 feet to work with. So we actually had to design a set. I worked out the concept with my husband, Tommy, who's the stage manager of the show, as well as with Lou DiPella, who's the set designer, and Chris Cocker, who's the technical director. And the 4 of us kind of got together. We sat in the space. We took lots of measurements. The design really went through a lot of different phases. It changed before we finally settled on what we were going to do. And we ended up having to be very creative with it. And instead of doing a true 2-story set, we're actually doing kind of a split level, which is interesting, but it completely works. And it's a different way than the show's been staged ever before. So I'm really excited to see it built and see it come to fruition.
So it ended up, in the long run, it ended up being different than you thought in the beginning? It would look like?
Yes, it did.
So you had to be flexible.
Very flexible. That's kind of a key component to theater. No matter what you do, no matter what the show is you have to be willing to change your direction, you have to be willing to change your concept, and you have to be open to everybody's ideas. There's no my way or the highway view in theater. Everybody really contributes to the concept and contributes to the vision. And as a director, your role is really to get everybody thinking together because more minds are greater than one mind thinking alone.
And you have to adapt.
Have to adapt, absolutely.
Okay. So now, how do you feel the rehearsals are going, given the challenges of the set and the tightness of the cast and the way the play is itself? Everybody's got to be involved in all the acts. So how do you feel about this? Because it sounds, a little bit difficult.
Yeah, I think the rehearsals are going really well. I'm very fortunate. I have great actors. There's a saying that 90% of the job is done when you cast. That's somewhat true. In this show, it totally came out because I just have great actors that are willing to make the show a priority, willing to give it the time it needs, and are just fabulous together, really friendly, really gelling, and have committed themselves 100% to this process, and that really makes all the difference in the final product.
Well, that's the good news. So what are you nervous about?
It's funny, I'm not really nervous about anything at this moment. I kind of learned to take things as they come, and to, again, this idea of being flexible and being ready to adapt. I'm just ready to get this show on its feet. So, nervous isn't the right word, but excited, definitely. There's going to be challenges, I'm sure. I mean, the set's not built yet, so that's probably going to be an issue. But facing things, knowing that you can get through it, knowing that theater magic will work its wonders once again is a really great comfort.
Okay, so we talked about the set. What about costumes, props, anything else that, still hasn't been addressed?
The props are really complicated. The costumes, not so much in this show, but the props, there's 40 or 50 props in this show.
Okay.
And they not only do they have to be on stage, they have to be durable because they get tossed around like you wouldn't believe. So we have to be really careful. I mean, there's a whiskey bottle in the show, but the whiskey bottle can't be glass because the bottle gets thrown all over the place. So props are going to be difficult. We haven't gathered all the props yet. We're in the process of doing that. We've been working with a lot of rehearsal props, which have been very useful. But it'll be nice to get the real things on and see how well they last.
So besides your husband, who's a stage manager, you're going to have a prop manager behind here, making sure everything's all right, because it sounds like 40 props is a lot of props.
We do have a prop manager.
Okay.
Tim Kirk is our prop manager, and that was a role that needed to be filled in the team very quickly, and that was one of my actual roles that I put in the concept of my show and said I need more than an assistant stage manager. I need a props manager that's going to be here and working backstage on this show.
Okay, what do you think is the funniest moment in this show?
I don't think there's one funniest moment. There are so many moments that just have me rolling on the floor. This show is just filled with it. So no audience member will be bored coming to see this show. And each of the acts has their different comedies about them too. So each act is so different. I mean, Act 1, you have the rehearsal process. Anybody that's ever done a show can really appreciate the humor that's going on in the first act. Act 2 is kind of a 70-page mime act, really, because it's done completely in silence and it's all physical comedy, and anybody can appreciate that. And Act 3 is, it's the end product, it's Act 2 in reverse, and it's just hilarious. So I think everybody will come out of the show and have different moments that they thought were absolutely hilarious, and for different reasons.
Is there anything else you want to add about this show that you think people who might want to be interested in seeing it might want to know?
You won't regret it. You'll love coming to see the show. It's the perfect show to have in February when it's cold out and you need a pick-me-upper. This show will have you rolling on the floor and will just give you a really fun night of laughs and just make you love theater all the more.